It's a dilemma many people face. They don't know how to handle the fact that they're called and anointed of God, yet they seem to face all kinds of trials, and seemingly hell seems to come against them over and over. David experienced that. You and I experience this. It's a part of life, and it's a part of God's process. We don't always understand, but he refines us, and he knows what we need to do. In David's 20s, a time where many of us reflect about the good old days and the times we had vigor and the excitement and not a care in the world, seemingly walking on cloud nine. David, on the other hand, was running for his life. Oh, he killed the Goliath. He killed the Philistines. But friends, he would have a decade of having to run for his life because, oh yes, all because he was anointed of God. And God needed to sift him like wheat, like he needs to do the same thing, friends, with us. Let's look at it, friends. Last time, if you've been in this series with me, I'm continuing in the series. We covered 1 Samuel chapter 19. And Saul wanted him to get, in order for him to get his daughter, he told him he's going to have to get the Philistines' foreskins. And so David goes ahead and he actually does what many of us would look at as the impossibility of 100 foreskins from the Philistines. So Saul is angry. His anger is continuing to rage here. And he's trying to, we looked at the end of chapter 1 Samuel 19. If you were with me in the last video, you can go back and look at any of the videos for up to 30 days. But we looked at the fact that Saul was angry and was scared of losing the throne, which he already was predicted he was going to lose it. He already knew he was going to lose it. But he's trying to hang on in the flesh. So verse 10 in 1 Samuel 19, he tries to pin David to the wall with a spear. But David slips away from his presence and he escapes. And so now we're looking at 1 Samuel chapter 19. After Saul sent messengers to David to watch him, Michal, which was Saul's wife, lets him out through the open window from the top floor. He skips down because they're all after him. They're howling like dogs trying to get him. So what does he do? He goes through the window. She lets him go through the window. And so what happens is, verse 12, let's look at it. 1 Samuel 19:12. So Michal let David down through a window, and he went out and fled and escaped. And Michal took the household idol and laid it on the bed and put a quilt of goat's hair at its head and covered it with clothes. So this was like a household idol. It was called a teraphim. And what it would do was like a figurine used as a household idol, and it was like a good luck charm. So she takes this statue and she lays it in the bed, covers with a quilt of goat hair at its head, and covers it with clothes. So obviously, if they're after him, they're going to think he's in bed. When Saul sent messengers to take David, she said, he's sick. So she's covering up for him. Then Saul sent messengers to see David, saying, bring him to me on his bed, that I may put him to death. So here's the assurity. Saul is going to put him to death here. When the messengers entered, behold, the household idol was on the bed with the quilt of goat's hair on its head. So here's Saul now enraged with Michal. Why did you do this? Why did you let my enemy go? He's saying. Notice here, Saul is saying now in verse 17, why did you let my enemy go? Now he's admitting that David's his enemy. It wasn't David that desired to be an enemy, friends. That was jealousy that made Saul look at him as an enemy, wanting to wipe him out. The pangs of jealousy and the extent of what humans will do in order to try to cover up, in order to try to dominate. So here's Saul on a rage. Why did you let him go? And Michal said to Saul, he said to me, let me go. Why should I put you to death? So she's covering for him. Now David fled and escaped and came to Samuel at Ramah and told him all that Saul had done to him, and he and Samuel went and stayed at Naioth. So David now, he's escaping. He's going to Ramoth, which is about an hour's walk. So he's coming here, and he's coming to Samuel, which remember, if you can remember back in chapter 16, Samuel was the one that anointed him at the Lord's request. So he's inquiring. He's going to Samuel. He's wanting to spill his heart out, so to speak, of everything that's going on and the trouble that he's facing. So he's staying there at Naioth, is what's happening. And it was told Saul, saying, behold, David is at Naioth at Ramoth. So here you've got Saul being told where he's at, and he's inquiring of Samuel what to do. And back at Naioth, what it was sort of like a suburb. It was like a residential district. And so he goes there, David, in the event of trying to kind of blend in with the people, trying to hide and blend in. And Naioth was also a place where Samuel, in a sense, was like had a school of the prophets, and he would train a lot of the prophets there. So now all of a sudden Saul has messengers are telling him David's over there. So Saul sent messengers to take David, and when they saw the company of the prophets prophesying with Samuel standing and presiding over them, the Spirit of God came upon the messengers of Saul, and they began prophesying. So here, they're going after, seeking Saul, but all of a sudden, messengers of prophets are starting to prophesy here. And when it was told Saul, he sent other messengers, and they also prophesied. So Saul sent messengers again the third time. So it's the third time he's sending messengers, and they're prophesying. And then he himself, in verse 24, it's saying he himself goes to Ramah, and then unbelievably, he begins to prophesy. And you would think, how on earth is Saul prophesying? He's kind of a madman now. He's out of his mind. He's prophesying. But the reality, friends, is all that is glitter is not gold. And so we're going to see here that, he's prophesying here. And through this event happening, God is weaving his divine sovereignty over the whole situation. 1 Samuel 19:24 says this. And Saul now begins prophesying, and he stripped off his clothes, and he too prophesied before Samuel, and lay down naked all that day and all that night. Therefore, they say, is Saul also among the prophets. So here you got Saul now, even a madman out of his mind, but he begins prophesying, and what it's saying is he stripped off his clothes and lay down naked. Now, it wasn't literally that he was naked, but he stripped down his kingly robes, so to speak. And so what's happening here is he's stripping it off, but the reality is this. When he stripped off his kingly robe, it's almost a representation of God stripping Saul from the throne again. He's removing him from his kingship is what's happening. So God is pruning Saul. That's what's happening. He's putting him to the ground, making him utter praise to David. But you know what's happening? God's sovereign plan was in here. So Saul is stripped of his robe. He's laying on the ground, speaking. But it was God's sovereign plan. And friends, God can turn kings' hearts. God can use the enemy to help you. And that's exactly what happened. God used the enemy, Saul, while he was down, pinned to the ground, so to speak, prophesying, not in a good way, but prophesying because God allowed him to do that. So while he was pinned to the ground, it allowed David to escape. That was God's plan all along, allowing God to escape. So friends, it's possible. Reality is this. It is possible to have a wonderful spiritual experience and still be unsaved. All that glitter is not gold. Saul was out of his mind. He lost favor with God, but he was in the midst prophesying. So don't always look at things. You can have there are people that reprobate can have an experience, an enlightenment, but it doesn't always mean, friends, that they have God on their side. So that's where discernment comes in. So David here is going to be hunted from place to place for a decade. Lost the palace position, lost his wife, he won't be seeing her, and he's hunted by his father-in-law. So friends, when you look at yourself next time and wonder why this is seemingly hard trials keep going on, take a lesson in David's life. David's looking at David's life. It's not just to look at his life, but it's to look at our life and understand. And friends, be patient. Whatever God has promised you, whatever he's given you, God may have spears thrown at you in the spirit. But friends, if God said it, you can bank on it. In God's timing, in God's sovereignty. David learned that, and along the way through Psalms, we're going to look at Psalm 11 now. We're weaving Psalms. When you look at Psalms and you look at David's life, he wrote 73 of the 150 Psalms. So you can look at all these and see David's life and how these things are unfolding. But let's turn to Psalm 11 and let's see through this how what David is writing, what his reflections are in Psalm 11 over this period of time of what he's going through. Psalm 11, verse 1. In the Lord, David says, I take refuge. How can you say to my soul, flee as a bird to your mountain? So what's happening here is David's friends. He does have some friends here, and they're trying to tell him, with all the persecution going on, flee, go to the mountain. You're being hunted down. It's not safe. So, in the Lord I take refuge. How can you say to my soul, flee as a bird to your mountain? So he's saying, how can I do this? He's living his life as a fugitive, and his friends are advising him, go to the mountain. David knew, though, at the time, he just knew in his spirit it was the wrong thing to do. David would rather face the danger at this point than distrust the Lord his God. So he's trying to trust God through it. And then here, for behold, the wicked bend the bow. The friends are like saying, they make ready their arrow upon the string to shoot in darkness at the upright in heart. So the friends are saying here, they're secretly attacking you. Flee, run is what they're saying. They're shooting arrows at you. What can a righteous man like you do except flee, is what they're saying. You gotta flee, go, they're coming after you. Verse 3 in Psalm 11, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? So here David's friends says Saul's government is out to destroy him. If the foundations are destroyed, what hope do you have? You better flee. Verse 4, the Lord is in his holy temple. There's David's answer now and David's reflection as he writes in the psalm. The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold, his eyelids test the sons of men. And friends, his eyelids test you. He tests the souls of men. God is always testing our hearts, putting us through situations, wanting to see how we respond. Do we respond in a godly way? Do we heed his commandments? Or do we go the easy way out, the way of the flesh? David is reflecting on this. He already knows. He's testing, he's saying. Verse 5, Psalm 11:5. The Lord tests the righteous and the wicked, and the one who loves violence, his soul hates. So God tests them. God knows, and when you go the way of violence, God hates it. He despises it. So David knew God was looking after him, and God would take care of him. And that's what you need to resolve today, friends. If you're going through a hard trial, things are mounting, people coming against you, God is your fortress. God will go with you. Have that faith, friends. Verse 6, upon the wicked he will rain snares. Fire and brimstone and burning wind will be the portion of their cup. So he's going to annihilate them. He's going to destroy them. Fire and brimstone. It's going to be a violent way. God is going to deal with enemy forces and those that come against you, friends. For the Lord is righteous. He loves righteousness. The upright will behold his face. So see how David is reflecting on this. The heart of David when he's going through all this situation. Now let's go back to 1 Samuel 20. Again, we're weaving Samuel, David's life, in 1 Samuel with what's happening in Psalm. In 1 Samuel, verse 20, after, remember, Saul was pretty much out of his mind, but God allowed him to prophesy, and he allowed David to escape. So 1 Samuel 20, verse 1, then David fled from Naioth to Ramah, and came and said to Jonathan, what have I done? What is my iniquity? And what is my sin before your father that he is seeking my life? Don't we say that sometime? I didn't do anything, Lord. What have I done? Why am I going through this? It doesn't make any sense. We've all said that, friends. Surely we have. David's saying that. And he wants to know now if Saul's changing his mind. He's inquiring of Jonathan. Hey, ask your father, what's going on? What have I done? He's saying, I haven't done anything wrong. And you know, friends, the reality is sometimes just following the Lord is enough to make unbelievers just despise you for no other reason than spirit to spirit. They just can't stand. They just can't stand the spirit within you. And some of them don't even know why, but they just can't stand it. The Spirit of God in you. So friends, understand this. And then what's happening here, verses 5 through 11, there's going to be a new moon feast. And David is supposed to be there for special sacrifices. But he plans to hide in the field because he's afraid. He's scared of Saul running for his life, and he wants to hide. But he's supposed to be there at the New Moon Festival because of his situation with Saul being under him and him being in the court there and doing what he's already done, putting out the Philistines. So he's supposed to be there in the New Moon Feast, but surely he doesn't want to go. His life's in danger. He's had how many swords and how many spears thrown at him. So David is telling Saul here, or David is telling Jonathan here in verse 6, if your father misses me at all, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me to run to Bethlehem, his city, because it is a yearly sacrifice for the whole family. So tell your father, I can't be there. I can't be there. I got to run to Bethlehem. It's a yearly sacrifice. In other words, he's making an excuse. I can't be there. Tell him that. So Jonathan agrees to discover the state of his father's heart. He's going to try to inquire toward David in verses 12 and 13 in 1 Samuel 20. Then Jonathan said to David, the Lord, the God of Israel, be witness. When I have sounded out my father about this time tomorrow or the third day, behold, if there is good feeling toward David, then shall I not then send it to you and make it known to you? So if I feel Saul's okay with you, I'm going to let you know. I'm going to kind of feel the way and let you know. I'll be loyal to you, Jonathan is saying. And he is loyal. He's as loyal as he possibly can be. Verse 13, if it please my father to do you harm, may the Lord do so to Jonathan and more. Also, if I do not make it known to you and send you away, that you may go in safety, and may the Lord be with you as he has been with my father. And then verse 15, and you shall not cut off your loving kindness from my house forever. So Jonathan is saying here now to David, who he knows in his heart that David's destined for the throne. He just knows it. And so at this point here, what's happening is any time in the days when one royal house was replaced by another, it was common that the new royal house would kill the potential rulers of the old royal house. And so Jonathan and David, what's happening here is Jonathan is saying, hey, by the way, you shall not cut off your loving kindness from my house forever. Not even when the Lord cuts off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth. So he's saying here, hey, don't cut me off. Don't destroy me if you get to the throne, because that's the situation here. Spare me, in other words, when you get to the throne here, is what he's saying here. Verse 16, so Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, may the Lord require it at the hands of David's enemies. So Jonathan and David, they agree to care for one another. That they're knit for one another. And then in verses 18 to 23, what ends up happening is Jonathan is telling David to remain by the stone of Ezel there. And after he finds out Saul's heart, he's going to kind of shoot arrows. He's going to shoot 3 arrows to, kind of a signal they're going to have between the two of them. Whether it's going to be safety for David to come back or whether David needs to flee. It's going to indicate between the two of them, they're going to communicate on what's going to happen. So he's going to shoot some arrows after Jonathan inquires to see what Saul's state is at the time. And verse 21, and behold, I will send the lad, saying, go find the arrows. If I specifically say to the lad, behold, the arrows are on this side of you, get them, then come, for there is safety for you, and no harm, as the Lord lives. But if I say to the youth, behold, the arrows are behind you, go, for the Lord has sent you away. So, according to this communication, if I say if it's on the side, you're going to be okay. But if I say the arrows are beyond you, you better flee, because Saul is after you. So he's making that kind of a hidden code between them. And I don't know about you, but if I was David, I surely wouldn't even want to chance it. I don't care. I would not want to chance it with the spears already being thrown at me. I wouldn't even want to entertain the thought of being in Saul's presence. Friends, I don't know how you would have reacted, but you put yourself in that situation. You're almost pinned to the wall and you escape it, 3-4 times already. I know I wouldn't have the bravery to do that. But anyway, it's this communication going on to try to find out Saul's heart. So then what happens here, there's a new moon festival then happening. And of course, David's supposed to be there. And the first day he's not there, Saul doesn't make anything of it, because sometimes if you got to cleanse yourself, become ceremonial clean, you could miss a day here and there. But it's coming up, the new moon festival, and they're sitting for the meal here, and it's the second day that's gone by that David's seat there is empty. So it's the second day. Now all of a sudden Saul is kind of getting agitated, and he's wondering, he's inquiring of Jonathan, where is David? Why is he not here? What's going on here? And so verse 30, let's look at verse 28. Jonathan then answered Saul, David earnestly asked leave of me to go to Bethlehem, for he said, please let me go, since our family has a sacrifice in the city, and my brother has commanded me to attend. And now if I have found favor in your sight, please let me get away, that I may see my brothers. For this reason, he has not come to the king's table. So that's the reason. He's covering up. Jonathan is covering up for David. That's the reason. So Saul already in his madman state, he's already a madman. He's already got delusions. So what happens? That exasperates it. It ends up, look at verse 30, 1 Samuel 20, verse 30. Then Saul's anger burned against Jonathan, and he said to him, you son of a perverse, rebellious woman, do I not know that you are choosing the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives on the earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established. Therefore, now send and bring him to me, for he must surely die. So here, you know at this point, the madman of Saul, he's after him with everything he's got. But worse off, jealousy has so invaded Saul's very fiber, the very veins, the very blood that flows through Saul's veins is full of envy, to the point where he's going to throw a spear at his own son. Look at verse 33 in 1 Samuel 20. Then Saul hurled his spear at him to strike him down. So Jonathan knew that his father had decided to put David to death. So here we got the understanding. He almost killed his own son because he was angry, and he knew Jonathan was on David's side now. So anybody, I'll tell you, when anyone gets in the way of jealousy, people that are jealous, they'll kill even the people closest to them. That's how poisonous envy is. That's how poisonous jealous is to the soul, how inhibiting it is to the very fabric of who you are. It's envy, the Bible says, is as rottenness to the bones, as what Proverbs says. So Saul's a madman. Jealousy and fear of losing the throne. He's on a wicked way now to try to get him at any cost. And look at verses 35 through 40 of 1 Samuel 20. Now it came about in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field for the appointment with David, and a little lad was with him. And he said to this lad, run, find now the arrows which I am about to shoot. As the lad was running, he shot an arrow past him. So here's this communication going on to let David know where he's hiding and near the rock of Ezel, to let him know this is going to indicate whether you're safe or not, or you need to flee. Verse 37, when the lad reached the place of the arrow which Jonathan had shot, Jonathan called after the lad and said, is not the arrow behind you? And Jonathan called after the lad, hurry, be quick, do not stay. And Jonathan's lad picked up the arrow and came to his master. So that would be the indication for David to flee at this point. But the lad was not aware of anything, so the lad doesn't know what's going on. He's just innocently out there picking up the arrows. But the lad was not aware of anything. Only Jonathan and David knew what the matter was. Then Jonathan gave his weapons to his lad and said to him, go bring them to the city. So here, what you got happening, Jonathan, that was knit to David, really in God's sovereign plan. It was God's sovereign plan. You know, sometimes there's friends you're knit with for life. A handful of them sometimes that are true friends. God gives them to you. They're knit for life, and God sovereignly knits you together to do things together, to be able to work with one another. But there was an appointed time here, and there's a season here. And Jonathan's season seems like it's just about up with working with David here, because Jonathan, here, right at this point, he lost favor with his father. Father's angry. Father knows that Jonathan's on David's side. There are times, friends, you must stand up for the courage of your convictions. Are you willing to do that? In the face of persecution, in the face of hard times, are you willing to trust God and supersede the trial over you, and to be able to follow righteousness, help other people because you know it's the right thing to do? It might not be the popular thing to do, but it's the right thing to do, to stand up for someone, to speak on their behalf. That's the right thing to do. That's a godly man and a godly woman doing the right thing. Because friends, sometimes it does cost you something, and God will test you and he'll try you. But you know what? When you come out and you do the right thing, God will bless you. He will take record of that. He will bless you for doing that. And that's, friends, what separates those that walk with God in a real intimate, strong way, and those that don't have that strong relationship, that give in to the wiles of people, that cave in to when people want to do things wrong, you want to kind of go with the crowd. That's the difference, friends. How are you today? How do you measure up? Do you stand up for those that can't stand up for yourself? Do you defend those that you know have done right? How do you do that? So that single arrow that Jonathan threw, hurry, it said, be quick, do not stay. That single arrow and that exclamation that he said, David, his whole life, because of that thing to say hurry, run, it would change his entire life. No longer was he welcome in the palace, David. No longer was he among the army of Israel. No longer could he go home. Yes, friends, he was anointed. He was God's chosen. The next time you go through a heartache, just understand it's part of the process, friends. He's cut off from everything. Here he's in his 20s, going to be running from pillar to post, running for his life, cut off from everything, destined to live as a fugitive for many years, till he finally rules all over Israel at age 30. But here he's in his early 20s, one thing after another. Hey, if it happened to David, it can happen to any of us going through things. David and Jonathan, they're only going to meet once more shortly before Jonathan's death. David, he's not going to return to a normal life, so to speak, until Saul is dead and he gets the entire throne of Israel. Things change, friends. Things happen, friends. When you wonder, all of a sudden, things were going good. Oh, things were great. And all of a sudden, it seems like all hell turns loose. Sometimes you're in the will of God. Sometimes you're not. Got to have discernment. You got to pray, friends. Where's your situation? Where do you find yourself? You know, you can be in the will of God, face immense trials. That's just part of life. The road of heartache, it wasn't just destined for David. It was destined for Job, we know. Joseph, we know. Paul, we know. And of course, Jesus. So how much more is it going to be destined for us? If God could put David in a palace where people must depend on him, the reality is God had to teach David to depend on him alone. He's removing his supports. He's removing those things. Sometimes, just like he removes Jonathan, he's removing all those things that we count on for safety, for crutches. Sometimes you feel like you stand alone in the middle of an ocean and you feel like you're drowning. because God has to remove all the supports around you sometimes so you can depend on him alone. Because when he blesses you, when he anoints you, and when he eventually calls you to do that very thing, you're going to trust him. You're going to know what it's like to lean on him and not to lean on yourself. You've been through weakness. You understand. In your ability, you can't do it. Oh, David flung that sling. He killed 9 feet 9 inch Goliath. But the reality is now he's running for his life. David must learn to let God be his defense and his promoter. And so do you. And so do I. That's just what we need to do. Friends, God is going to empty you out. He's going to empty us out. To pass beyond the thing we know, the familiar. He empties us. He strips us from the familiar. Why? He puts us into the unknown because of his divine sovereignty. It's part of his plan, friends. Is it painful? Surely it is. Is it tiptoe through the tulips? That's a mockery, isn't it? Those of us that have been through anything. If you're 35 and above, you've been through some hell, surely. You understand what I mean? If you're younger, just wait, it's coming. But you cling to God with everything you got. Let's look at Psalm 63 now. Looking again at David's life, David's reflection. Psalm 63. Psalm 63, again, this is a psalm that David wrote in the middle of what he's going through. David, this is when David's in the wilderness of Judah. You know, he's running and here and there, and so David's escaping, and here he's in the wilderness of Judah. Let's look at his heart when he reflects this. Psalm 63, verse 1. O God, thou art my God. I shall seek thee earnestly. My soul thirsts for thee, and my flesh yearns for thee in a dry and weary land where there is no water. So thou art my God, he's saying. He's personalizing it. And the day when pagans thought there were many gods, and each had the notion of their own God, David is saying, thou art my God. He's trusting in the true God. In a dry and weary land where there is no water, he's saying. And so this is a reflection of the Judean wilderness where he's hiding. Oh, God, you are my God. In the wilderness, even though it's dry and it's a barren land, you are my God. And friends, the reality is, don't wait until the comforts of life come along before you get in communion with God. If you feel you're in a dry and weary land, friends, look to God like he did. Thou art my God. That's what you say. If you feel like you're parched, things seem dry, things seem like they dried up, things that used to work are suddenly not working for you anymore because God's got you in the Judean wilderness, so to speak. David, David will tell you, if you could speak to him today, what would he say? He'd tell you this: to not pray when you feel like it, but pray always. Always, thou art my God. Look to God. Verse 2, Psalm 63, 2. Thus I have beheld thee in the sanctuary to see thy power and thy glory. So the power and the glory of God. Verse 3. Because thy loving kindness is better than life, my lips will praise thee. The love of God to him was more precious than his own life, is what he's saying. Thy loving kindness is better than life. Oh, he knew the love of God. He experienced the love of God through all the hell he went through. There are some today that are in the Judean wilderness, but you know what? They're not praising God. They're mad. They're angry. Why did you do this, God? No, why? But some of us know, I will not take on that demeanor. David didn't. Neither do we need to do that. Verse 4, Psalm 63, 4. So I will bless thee as long as I live, David's saying. I will lift up my hands in thy name. So he's saying common posture of prayer among the Hebrews at that time was to have hands lifted in praise gracefully. It was a way of gracefully receiving God. So David's saying here he's in the Judean wilderness, but he's going to lift his hands in praise, so to speak. Can you do that, friends? If God sifts you like wheat, can you lift your hands and praise him in the middle of your Judean wilderness? Just something to think about, because trials come. And you know what? Sometimes when you hear words like this, God's going to test you on it. You know, sometimes when you hear something, God makes you hear it, and then he tests you through it. So be strong. Be fortified. You may be great today. Tomorrow things may change. Oh, take refuge like David did. Verse 5, my soul is satisfied and with marrow and fatness, and my mouth offers praise with joyful lips. So, he's saying here, deep satisfaction, it's coming in a surrendered heart, seeking God without reservation. My soul's satisfied with the marrow and fatness to the very fabric of my bones. I'm satisfied. I surrender to you, God, without reservation. Do you surrender to God without reservation? Or is it conditional? Is it based on how things go in your life? There's a difference here. Verse 6. When I remember thee on my bed, I meditate on thee in the night watches, for thou hast been my help. And in the shadow of thy wings I sing for joy. My soul clings to thee. Thy right hand upholds me, but those who seek my life to destroy it will go into the depths of the earth. They will be delivered over to the power of the sword. So he's reflecting. He's reflecting on God's goodness in his life. And those that go into coming after him, God's going to deal with them, he's saying. Verse 11, but the king will rejoice in God. Everyone who swears by him will glory. So David, he's not yet on the throne. Not yet on Israel's throne. Yet it's a promise of God. And he's reflecting on it. The king's going to rejoice in God. Everyone who swears by him will glory. For the mouths of those who speak lies will be stopped. So here's David. God allowed him to go through all these things. And he's reflecting. And look at Psalm 64 now. Again, look at Psalm, and it's a prayer of deliverance from his secret enemies. Psalm 64. Hear my voice, O God. In my complaint, preserve my life from dread of my enemy. Hide me from the secret counsel of evildoers, from the tumult of those who do iniquity. Verse 3, Psalm 64:3. Who have sharpened their tongue like a sword. They aimed bitter speech as their arrow to shoot from the concealment at the blameless. So they're aiming their arrow. They're secretly plotting against David, is what he's reflecting here. In words, in lies, all these things aiming at his death. They're out to get him. Saul and all the enemies are out to get him. Saul is causing people to come against him. To shoot from concealment at the blameless. Suddenly they shoot at him and do not fear. So they're suddenly coming against him. He's fearing for his life. Verse 5, they hold fast to themselves an evil purpose. They talk of laying snares secretly. So David's having to be vigilant, looking around. Verse 6, they devise injustices, saying, we are ready with a well-conceived plot. For the inward thought of the heart of a man are deep. But God, here's David, but God will shoot at them with an arrow. Suddenly they will be wounded. They come against me, all of a sudden, God, the judgment of God is going to come on them, upon the wickedly, unexpectedly. Friends, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Hold still, because God God in his sovereignty is going to suddenly wipe out those that come against you. Verse 8, so they make him stumble. Their own tongue is against them. All who see them will shake their head. So the enemy, he's going to make the enemy go in delusion here. They're going to trip. The way they tried to trip up David, God's going to end up tripping them up. Suddenly, they're going to stumble. That's what happens, friends, when people come against God's anointed. You are God's anointed. Amen. Verse 9, then all the men will fear and will declare the work of God and will consider what he has done. So everyone then is going to look upon, they see the wicked, they know the wicked, they see what the wicked has done, but it's going to cause them to consider what God has done. They're going to say, oh, God is a just God. God does deal righteously. God's going to do that right in front of people to show himself strong so people can see he is a God of justice. They will learn to see the wounded and what happens when God deals with them. And then another one, let's look at Psalm 138. Here's another Psalm, 138. David is speaking, and he's saying this, Psalm 138, I will give thanks to thee with all my heart. I will sing praises to thee before the gods. I will bow down toward thy holy temple and give thanks to thy name, for thou hast magnified thy word according to thy name. On the day I called, thou didst answer me. So you know he's running for his life, but he's reflecting on the goodness of God. Thou didst make me bold with strength in my soul. So bold, in other words, he's making me proud because of what he's doing. My God, I'm proud. I feel so delighted and proud of what God is doing for me. All the kings of the earth will give thanks to thee, O Lord, when they have heard the words of thy mouth, and they will sing of the ways of the Lord. For great is the glory of the Lord. For though the Lord is exalted, yet he regards the lowly, but the haughty he knows from afar. So David has learned he's going to deal with he deals with the proud, with those that are haughty, but he takes care of those that are humble. That's why he was a good leader. Going to be a good leader in understanding how to lead righteously. Verse 7. Though I walk in the midst of trouble, thou wilt revive me. Thou wilt stretch forth thy hand against the wrath of my enemies. So he's understanding God's greatness and kindness and how it builds our faith when we learn that, friends. When we learn of the kindness, that's why God has to put us through things, hard times, and then he delivers us so we can see his kindness. How are you going to see the kindness? How are you going to see the deliverance of God? How are you going to see his right hand coming through for you if he doesn't bring you through things? He brings you, he allows things filtered through his hands of love. He allows you to go through things, but friends, it's for a purpose, so you can then glory in his delivering power. That's why he puts you through things. Verse 8, Psalm 138, 8, David says, the Lord will accomplish what concerns me. Thy loving kindness, O Lord, is everlasting. Do not forsake the works of thy hands. Realize, friends, Philippians 1:6, he who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. In Jesus' name, amen. So we're going to go back to 1 Samuel 21, almost done here for today, but 1 Samuel 21, again, we looked at some of the Psalms. What's happening now in 1 Samuel 21? So you saw what ends up happening. Arrows were shooted. David and Jonathan are going to have to be separated now. Jonathan has lost favor with his father. David running for his life. It's probably going to be a 10-year run. 1 Samuel 21, verse 1. Then David came to Nob, to Abimelech, the priest, and Abimelech came trembling to meet David and said to him, why are you alone and no one with you? In other words, kings need to be protected. Why are you alone? He's saying. Verse 2, 1 Samuel 21:2. Then David said to Abimelech, the priest, the king has commissioned me with a matter, and he has said to me, let no one know anything about the matter on which I am sending you and with which I have commissioned you, and I have directed the young men to a certain place. So here David is lying. He has to lie. He's trying to cover up. He doesn't have men with him. He doesn't have men with him. He says the king commissioned him, rather than revealing the reality of saying, hey, this is a reality. I'm running for my life. Saul's after me. You know, when he came to the priest, he could have admitted to the priest, but instead he's lying here. He's trying to cover up. And friends, what would you do in that situation? Here, David's a human being here, and he does love the Lord, but he's running for his life, so he's saying here, he's pretending the king commissioned him here, and that the people he's directed, the young men, to another place. That's why he's saying that he's alone. In other words, so he's saying the king commissioned me. And so verse 3, now therefore, what do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread, or whatever can be found. So David's hungry. He's wanting some bread. In verse 4, and the priest answered and said, there's no ordinary bread on hand, but there is consecrated bread, or consecrated bread is the showbread. So I don't have the ordinary bread that everyone can eat, but it's bread consecrated. They had that, friends, at the temple. They had consecrated bread, which was the showbread, and it wasn't to be treated casually. This consecrated bread was to be eaten by the priests in a holy place, holy, dedicated. It had to be regarded as holy and, not just distributed casually. So they're saying here, I don't have ordinary bread. I only have consecrated bread. Then David, but look at this. There's no ordinary bread on hand, but consecrated bread. If only the young men have kept themselves from, it says, and the priest answered David and said, there's no ordinary bread on hand, but there's consecrated bread. If only the young men have kept themselves from women here. And so David answered and said to the priest, surely I haven't been with any women. So in other words, you have to be consecrated in order to eat this bread. So David say, no, I haven't been with any women. And when I set out from the vessels of the young men were holy, though it was an ordinary journey, how much more than today would their vessels be holy? So he's saying, no, I have not slept with men or slept with women here, is what he's saying here. I haven't done it. So the priest gave him consecrated bread. For there was no bread there but the bread of the presence, which was removed from before the Lord in order to put hot bread in its place when it was taken away. So the priest is giving him here the consecrated bread. Verse 7, now one of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord, and his name was Doeg the Edomite, the chief of Saul's shepherd. And David said to Abimelech, now is there not a spear or a sword on hand? For I brought neither my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's matter was urgent. So David's lying, and he's saying here, the king's matter was urgent. I wasn't able to carry a sword with me. Is there a sword? David's saying to Abimelech, is there a sword that I can have here? So again, he's saying the king's matter was so urgent. David resorted to lying. And so what's happening here is he's not revealing the reality of the situation. Verse 9, then the priest said, the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, behold, it is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you would take it for yourself, take it, for there is no other except it there. And David said, there is none like it, give it to me. So David here is ending up taking the sword of Goliath that he killed in battle, and he's taken it, and he's going to have to use it as he's running for his life, and he's covering up, pretending that he's doing what Saul told him to do on a matter urgent. Verse 10, then David rose and fled that day from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. But the servants of Achish said to him, is this not David, the king of the land? Did they not sing to this one as they danced, saying, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s? So he's going to Achish, king of the Gath. David now is among the Philistines, and they're recognizing him. That's where he's at right now. He's carrying Goliath's sword, and his own in Goliath's own hometown. He's carrying his sword. Here he's in Philistine territory. He's in the enemy territory, running for his life. Ironically, he's taking Goliath's sword, and he's having to run, and he's trying to find refuge. But here he finds refuge where? Among pagans, among the very people that he's killed before. But they're recognizing him. They're saying, aren't you the one that they sung, David slung his thousands, and Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s? So they're recognizing him. So David here is going to have to do something quick. He's scared. He's frightened. And David took these words to heart and greatly feared Achish, king of Gath. So he's afraid here. He knew he's discovered here. And he's understood that King Achish wouldn't let a man go that already killed Goliath. Here, King Achish is head of the Philistines, and he's not going to let David go if he knows it's David. So what does he do? Verse 15. Or verse 13, so he disguised his sanity before them and acted insanely in their hands and scribbled on the doors of the gate and let his saliva run down his beard. That would be like a madman. David is running for his life, and here he knows he's discovered, so he's going to act like a madman. Saliva is running down his beard, and so now they're going to look at him now like, oh, surely this can't be David. He's a madman. Surely that's not him. Verse 14, then Achish said to his servants, behold, you see the man behaving as a madman? Why do you bring him to me? Surely this is not David. Surely not. Do I lack madman that you have brought this one to act a madman in my presence? So this one come in my house? So he knows right now, he's seeing here that David, God's sovereignty. Friends, God works in uncanny ways to protect us sometime. And David, in haste, he acted like a madman. Maybe God, in his wisdom, gave him insight to act. So what's happening, he's saying that this king is saying, get him out of my sight. He's a madman. He's surely not David. So you see what's happening here. David running for his life, friends. And one thing after another seems to be happening in David's life. And we're going to see more of this unfold between David's life running and Psalms here and how his life unfolds. And friends, if this has touched you in any way, if you love to share this, I'd appreciate if you do this and tell other people to look on. And I'm going to continue on this series in a few days, and I hope this has touched you in a way, friends, to realize your life, friends, is in God's hands. It's safe in God's hands, and you can trust him, friends. And if God allows you to go through things, he's going to want you to see his character, and you're going to come out like gold, and you're going to come out praising God, just like David did, even in the wilderness. So God bless you, friends. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you in a few days. Have a wonderful day.